My pop-pop Ben, it's one of the ways that you know that I'm from Philadelphia, that I called my grandparents pop-pop. My pop-pop Ben Beichman arrived in Philadelphia in 1910 with his mother Sarah and his older brother Jake. Ben was 5 years old. He didn't speak a word of English, and the family barely had 2 nickels to rub together. My pop-pop was fleeing the pogroms. Every Passover during Seder, he would tell the same story, the story of his exodus and of his redemption. He would point to the scar just beneath his eye, and he would say, "Do you see this? Do you see this? I got this from the Cossacks." We learned that a pogrom was coming to Ostrog, he would say, and we left immediately the next day, hiding in a cart full of hay. And when we got to the border, the Cossacks would take a pitchfork and they would put it into the hay to make sure that there were no Jews that were hiding in it. But I didn't move a muscle, my pop-pop said, not a sound, quiet as a mouse, and we escaped and headed to America. As a kid, I thought this story was as miraculous as the parting of the Red Sea. My pop-pop, the superhero, who at 5 years old was stabbed with a pitchfork at the eye, but remained still and silent and escaped to freedom, to the promised land, to the golden Medina. As an adult, I figured out it was an embellishment, though no one really knows where that scar beneath his eye really came from. But that my pop-pop, his mother and his brother were refugees, about that, there is no doubt. Our history is replete with stories of expulsions and exoduses, beginning with the Exodus from Egypt. Since then, we Jews have experienced at least 67 major expulsions and events that prompted significant streams of Jewish refugees. The Middle Ages, from 1100 to 1600, was one of the most active periods of Jewish wanderings, from crusades to inquisitions to blood libels. Take a look at this map, and you get just an inkling of that history. Pogroms, Nazis, the Russians again, Arab lands, Ethiopia. For many of us, it is our personal history. And for those of us who are a generation or two removed from an actual refugee experience, when we sit down for Seder on Passover in a few weeks, yes, it's only 3 weeks away, we strive always to understand what it was like to be a refugee. In fact, that's the climax of the Haggadah itself. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lerot et atzmo as ki'ilu hu yatsa mimitzrayim. In every generation, a person is obligated to see him or herself, themselves, as if they personally had to flee Egypt. HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and JIAS, our Canadian affiliate, was set up originally by the Jewish community to assist and advocate and resettle Jewish refugees. And now, because of our success, the Jews have mostly been rescued from lands in which they're in need of rescue. These organizations help all refugees. HIAS publishes a refugee Haggadah that emphasizes the impact of the ritual and of the reenactment of refugee status. As a refugee people, they write, an immigrant people, we know that anti-Jewish and anti-immigrant hatred are deeply intertwined. The Torah never wants us to forget this either. In Exodus we read, "V'ger lo toneh v'lo tilchatzenu, ki gerim hayitim be'eretz Mitzrayim." You shall not wrong a stranger or oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And in Leviticus we read, "Ke'ezrach mikem yeh lachem hager itchem v'ahavta lo kamocha, ki gerim hayitim be'eretz Mitzrayim, ani Adonai Elohechem." The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love them as you love yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And as if that weren't enough motivation for us to behave that way towards the stranger, the Torah adds, Ani Adonai Elohechem. God declares, I am the Lord your God, and this is important to me. Therefore, it should be important to you. The principle of welcoming the stranger as a central Jewish value is repeated more times than any other commandment in the Torah. Though this week's Torah reading, Ki Tisa, does not make an explicit connection to refugees or asylum seekers, nevertheless, there are certainly lessons that we can apply on this Refugee Awareness Shabbat. The Parsha opens with the words, Ki tisa et rosh b'nei Yisrael lifkudehem v'natnu ish kofer nafsho l'Adonai pivkodotam. When you take a census of the Israelite people according to their enrollment, each shall pay God a ransom for themselves for being enrolled. That ransom is a half a shekel, machatzita shekel. Rabbi Rachel Travis explains that each person contributes a half rather than a whole to symbolize that no one person is complete on their own. Rather, we become whole by contributing to the larger community. This is noteworthy when we think about refugees and asylum seekers' contributions to building the communities they come to call home. Too often when we talk about refugees and asylum seekers, we talk about the resources that they will require or that they will take. What gets lost is the many contributions that they make to the communities, to economy, to the arts, to the science, and more. We might conclude from this verse, therefore, this verse in Ki Tisa, that we need refugees and asylum seekers in order for our communities to reach their fullest potential. That's certainly the perspective of the Vilna Gaon, who notes that the word v'natnu in our pasuk is a palindrome. Vav nun taf nun vav. Spelled the same way forwards as it is backwards. The significance of this, he says, is that the one who gives today gets tomorrow. And that's certainly been our experience as a congregation, having sponsored Syrian refugees Hannah, Tarek, and their three daughters, Sana, Siba, and Basan, who read the prayer for Canada this morning. Tarek is working at a plumbing supply company. Hannah is pursuing a certificate to work as a medical instrument sterilization technician, and Sana has been accepted into a chemical engineering program. 4 years after their arrival, they are all fluent in English, excel at school, and even go to summer camp, God willing, this summer as well, in Algonquin Park. We have heard them before as they have spoken to us at Beth Tzedek. This is a success story and a clear example of Sadia Gaon's interpretation of v'natnu. At Beth Tzedek, we call this value give and get. Canadians also value welcoming the stranger. In a January opinion piece in the Globe and Mail, Michael Adams, who's the president and CEO of the Environics Institute, wrote that amid the upheavals of 2020, pre-existing Canadian trends toward openness and inclusion have continued, have not rolled back. Did Canadians grow more fearful of immigrants taking their jobs as unemployment rose to unprecedented levels? No. Strong and increasing majorities of Canadians, he writes, express comfort with current immigration levels and see immigrants as good for the Canadian economy, not as threats. Did Canadians become more persuaded that the arrival of newcomers would threaten their cultural and harm the social fabric? No, he writes. By a margin of 5-1, the public continues to believe immigration makes Canada a better country. And they are most likely to say this is because welcoming newcomers makes for a more diverse, multicultural place in which to live. V'natnu, the one who gives today, gets tomorrow. Today, writes Hayes in its Refugee Haggadah, is the first moment in history when Jews are not predominantly refugees. Rooted in our communal experience in this generation, as in all generations before us, the Haggadah continues, the Jewish people know that our futures are bound up with those who now seek to enter our country, particularly refugees and asylum seekers fleeing violence and persecution. That's why we at Beth Tzedek have decided to sponsor another refugee family waiting to settle here in Canada. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., we hope you will join us as we learn about the work of Jayas and hear from Dawit, an Eritrean refugee whose family we are sponsoring under the family reunification legislation. His family is currently caught in Ethiopia, right in the area in the northern part of the country where the war is taking place and where there have recently been allegations of war crimes committed. They are safe for the time being, but every moment we delay in getting them here is filled with danger. Thanks to the generosity of our community, we have raised the $50,000 necessary to resettle them in Canada. And we received generous gifts of furniture for their apartment when they arrive, and our team of volunteers are ready to help guide them in their settlement and acclimation to life in Toronto. We only wait for the government to approve their travel documents and their arrival. We invite you to participate in this mitzvah, to help us ensure that not only Dawit's family, but every family that Jayas and others in the GTA are sponsoring can come here in safety and soon. It starts with meeting Dawit tomorrow, 4 p.m. In taking on Refugee Awareness Shabbat, we demonstrate our commitment to actualize our values and to live a meaningful Jewish life, a life inspired by the lessons of Torah that have us never forget that we were strangers in the land of Egypt, and as a result of that, that we have a responsibility to pay it forward, working towards making this world a better place for ourselves, our peoples, and all peoples. With regard to refugees, the highest Haggadah has a prayer with which I think it is appropriate for us to conclude this morning. Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, may no more generations suffer at the hands of those who vilify the other, and may we continue to be God's partners in the ongoing redemption of those who long for freedom. Amen.